This is Captov. My name is Michael McCullough. Today we're going to talk about sprint planning. Let's start with how sprint planning is intended to run. So it happens on the first day of the sprint. The sprint starts with sprint planning. The product owner, development team, and Scrum Master all attend. Their inputs to this. Inputs will be a refined product backlog, a definition of done, any retrospective let's say commitments or things the team has decided they're going to start doing, new practices they want to start to integrate that might affect the rate at which they're getting through work. In addition, velocity, right? So what is the rate, if this is available, the rate they've historically worked through or gotten through the work in the product backlog. And finally, capacity, right? So the capacity of, the upcoming sprint. Maybe somebody might be sick or going away on vacation. So these things all sort of are inputs to a team for them to understand, how to plan or the amount of work they might be able to do and the goals they might be able to pursue. Now, sprint planning itself is broken down into two core topics. The first topic is what, and the second topic is how. Now, the what is where the Scrum team comes up with the forecast and the goal together. So the development team is actually, looking at the product backlog, determining how much of this do we think we can forecast to complete this sprint. The sprint goal, it gives theme, mission, purpose around the items that the team is working on. But in addition to that, if we remove items or add new items later, that sprint goal needs to stay consistent or the team needs to commit to this. Now, once we have a goal and a forecast, the team then defines or comes up with their plan, which is really their sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is the artifact that the development team creates. It starts it in sprint planning, and it describes how they're going to work towards the PBIs and the sprint goal that they've established in sprint planning. Now, for the first time, or for teams who are new to sprint planning, or teams that are just new and maybe they're familiar with sprint planning but they're new together, this sprint planning can be very awkward, particularly early on when I don't know the people, I haven't worked with them before. It's really hard to figure out, well, how much can we forecast to get done together when we have never really worked together? Or, it's been a long time since we worked together. Or there's somebody just new on the team we haven't worked with before. It's getting hard to understand that how are we going to work together as a team and how much we might be able to get done. On top of that, if it's a new product, it's also like, I haven't worked on this product before. It's sort of maybe I don't feel I fully understand the amount of work and what's behind it and what we're building. So there's all this uncertainty, sometimes causes teams to struggle in sprint planning and feel like they don't know or they're not sure if they can move forward or they feel confused, and it's really awkward to approach this first planning meeting or early sprint planning meetings. So before I talk about how to approach this problem, I'm going to tell you what not to do, because this is something I'll see a lot of teams do, and I want you to try to avoid this if you can. So what can seem like a great idea at the outset is for a team, and I'll see this happen all the time, because people are used to kind of looking at their work and maybe tasking out, how much time it's going to take me to do certain items. And so the team starts thinking like, well, what if we just start taking these one at a time, take product backlog items one at a time, but we create this kind of effort bucket, right? So for the sprint, we look at how much hours or days we have to work on the product, and you take one PBI at a time, and we do some task decomposition on it, and we start to fill in the bucket. And it's kind of like a game of Tetris. We're kind of continuing to fill this one PBI at a time, do some planning with it, fill the bucket up more until you get to that level of utilization in the bucket that teams will sometimes start or initially target. And this initial target will sometimes be 100%, 80%, whatever it is. Now, at the end of it, they're going to end up with a bunch of tasks. They'll start working on them, and they'll be working on PBIs in some fashion. And you might say to me, Mike, what does it matter? Well, I'm going to tell you why it matters. It's very important to understand self-organization and the importance of goals and goal-driven behavior within Scrum, but within a sprint with a sprint goal. Now, there's not a goal here. So what I'm hearing in this scenario, what I've seen in scenarios like this in the past, the goal here is utilization. There's not a goal to advance a product. It's about getting to 80% utilization, 100%, whatever it is. And so this is removing purpose and goal from a team, which degrades the potential of self-organization for this team. And it's hard to unwind this because you start to build a pattern. People start feeling like this is the way you do sprint planning. So you want to catch this early and not let this happen. So how should you approach this? Well, I'll give you my advice. Doesn't mean it's the right answer. I'm going to say how I would approach it. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So first off, you want to be reminding the team that, well, you know, the forecast can change. We're committing to a sprint goal, but the forecast can change. And what this means is that, you know, the team can, you know, if you take on too much, you can remove, the team can recognize this, meet with the product owner and say, okay, we took on too much work. Let's start to remove things, right, that make the most sense for us to remove. You know, and keep staying, you know, retaining the sprint goal at the same time. You need to be doing both, but you can remove work. In addition to that, you can add work. Maybe you take on too little. You can realize later and meet with the product owner and bring more work in. So both of these options will work great. So sometimes I'll say, hey, you know, let's take our best efforts, right? Just see what happens. If we need to pull it out, we do. Or, you know, if there's really a lot of uncertainty, sometimes you can suggest, well, hey, why don't we just take one and let's start working through this. And as the sprint starts to evolve, we start getting a better understanding of this work. We can meet with that product owner when it looks like we're going to have more capacity and bring more work in. So what you're trying to do is get the sense that the team is doing a forecast first before getting into the details of the plan. Both of those approaches I just talked about starts to move a team towards that while they're building knowledge of the product and each other and the way they work together and the rate at which they might be able to work together. Now, the final thing I'll add to this is that in the sprint backlog itself, another challenge I see some teams, focused on in sprint planning is feeling like they have to have their bucket filled. Even if they've done a forecast, we've done sort of goal-based where we did a forecast, a sprint goal, but there's this notion that, well, we've got to keep this thing full all of the time. We've got to get to 100%. And so they'll feel like they need to, decompose or do this very detailed, fragile planning. And you don't really have to. In fact, the rules of Scrum allow for, enough work, right? For, several days ahead. You can look maybe 3-4 days out, get a good enough plan for that, but allow that plan to evolve, right? That's perfectly acceptable. And actually, I would say it works better with Scrum when teams actually operate this way. Now, what it won't do is it won't give you a nice, neat sprint burndown chart. Now, if you're setting out sprint burndown charts, to report up and out to your organization, I'm going to tell you to stop. I got to do another post on that sometime. But don't worry about that. Don't make that a reason to make this really fragile, detailed plan at the beginning of a sprint. So with that, I thank you for watching. Please subscribe. If you don't like my approach to things, please add a comment below. Tell me about it. If you got other things that you do, I'd love to hear about what you do too. I mean, this is a common scenario that a lot of teams face, a lot of people face. I love to hear about the examples that we all see out there. So please subscribe, please add a comment, and enjoy your day.